"Dad, we should celebrate tonight. Just the two of us." That was the first thing Trevor, my own son, said after the news of the sale got out. His tone startled me more than the $73 million. He hadn't used that word with any warmth in nearly 2 decades. Yet he stood at my doorstep, acting as if nothing had ever cracked between us. He stepped past me and started arranging dishes on the small dining table, moving with an eagerness that didn't fit the son I'd known. He poured a drink for both of us, steady and deliberate, then glanced up. "You feeling all right? Big transitions can wear a man down?" The comment hung there. He'd never shown interest in my health, not during my surgeries, not during the long years after his mother left. Something about this sudden attention rang off-key. We sat. Trevor reached for the serving spoon before I did, nearly performing for someone not present. "That footage is cut," I said. "That's not how that afternoon happened." Trevor lowered the phone slowly. "You think I'd manipulate something like that? I'm scared for you. You've been off lately. Misdirecting conversations, repeating questions. I've tried to be patient, but someone has to step in." Hearing him speak so confidently unsettled me. The certainty in his tone clashed with the truth I lived. Yet a small doubt surfaced. Had I been missing signs? Small forgettings blend with age easily. Maybe something escaped my awareness. He continued before I found any response. "The appointment in Flagstaff isn't a punishment. It's a chance to get clarity. You deserve that." While he talked, my phone buzzed. A voicemail notification arrived, followed by a text from an unknown number. "Mr. Halperin. This is Danielle from Adult Protective Services. Your son mentioned concerns about your ability to manage daily decisions. Please return my call." The text seemed impossible. Trevor watched me read it. "I had to involve them," he said quietly. "When health is at risk, time matters." The room tightened around us. "You contacted APS about me?" I asked. "You left the oven on last month," he answered. "You forgot to pick up prescriptions. You think I want to be the bad guy here." "That oven reset itself after a power blink," I said. "You know that." Trevor shook his head, as if he had already accepted a version of reality that suited him. "Let's not debate the details. What matters is keeping you stable." Unable to sit there any longer, I left without another word. The hallway stretched ahead, and each step brought another question about how far he planned to go. Doubt crawled under my ribs, making every thought feel unreliable. Honor Health wasn't far, so I went straight to Marcia. She was finishing a phone call when I walked into her small office. "Ed, you're back." "What happened?" I handed her the letter from Flagstaff and the copied pages from the packet Trevor had brought earlier. "You asked me who told me to sign these. Can you look again?" "Something is off." Marcia studied the forms more deeply this time. "There's pre-filled language here," she said. "These fields should be blank when a patient receives them. No physician signs off without a proper evaluation." She traced a line with her finger. "See this box? It's marked as if you've already shown impairment. Whoever prepared this made assumptions or wanted reviewers to make them." The words sank in slowly. So this could influence a court. It could. If someone used it as supporting documentation, it would suggest you need oversight. Marcia's caution added weight to everything I'd begun to suspect. "Be careful, Ed. This isn't normal family concern." Leaving the hospital connections snapped into place the sudden generosity at dinner, the whispers among my old colleagues, the Flagstaff appointment, the APS message. Trevor wasn't responding to worry. He was shaping a narrative. Each step nudged me closer to a place where he could argue that I couldn't manage my own life. The drive home was spent replaying details I'd dismissed at the time, questions he raised, suggestions he slipped into conversation, the way he kept positioning himself as my guide. Every interaction had pointed toward one destination, demonstrating that I lacked capacity, so he could seize authority over my decisions, and more importantly, my finances. My phone rang while I pulled into the driveway. "Dad, where are you?" Trevor asked. "We need to talk about the keys." "What keys yours?" "I think it's safer if I hold them for a bit. Just until you get through the evaluation. You've been driving too far lately." "I don't need you to manage my driving," I said. "This isn't your choice." Trevor's tone sharpened. "If something happens because you refuse help, I'll have no other option but to request temporary guardianship. Don't force my hand." A cold pressure built along my arms. "You're talking about me as if I'm not here," I said. "I'm trying to protect you," he insisted. The call ended the same way as many others, swiftly on his terms. I went to the desk where the packet from our dinner still sat. A corner of one page stuck out at an angle. Pulling it free, I noticed a signature on a line I didn't remember signing. The letters matched my handwriting almost perfectly, but there was a stiffness in the strokes that didn't belong to me. Phoenix felt heavier than usual when I reached my attorney's office that afternoon. Robert Lang had handled my legal matters for years, a man who rarely raised his voice, yet never missed a detail. He ushered me into his conference room the moment I arrived. "Let me see the packet," he said. The documents slid across the table. He studied each page with a kind of disciplined focus I'd depended on more than once. A few minutes passed before he reached for a magnifier and leaned closer. "Ed, some of these signatures aren't yours." A beat passed before he added, "They're very convincing, but the pressure patterns don't match your usual strokes." The words landed sharply. "You're certain?" "Yes. And that concerns me deeply. False signatures paired with medical claims could support an emergency guardianship petition. With enough evidence, a judge might grant temporary authority to Trevor in as little as 48 hours. The idea of losing control over my own life so quickly jolted something in me. Robert continued laying out the steps Trevor might take, the legal thresholds, the risks I faced, if a petition went through uncontested. "This isn't theory," he said. "He's already created a paper trail. You need to understand how fast this can move." A chime from my phone sounded. A bank alert popped up showing restricted access to my primary account due to unusual activity. Another message followed asking me to verify a recent inquiry made by a third party. The third party listed Trevor Halperin. "Robert." "My account's frozen," I said. He scanned the notifications. "This looks like a fraud report was submitted. With the right language, they'll suspend access until you prove capacity. And if your son tells them you're impaired, the rest didn't need saying." Suddenly, every safety net I'd believed I had seemed thin. Money I'd earned over decades no longer sat within reach. The realization drained something from me. Heading home afterward, a strange vulnerability settled over my thoughts. Losing access to funds meant losing independence. Trevor had found another way to tighten control without confronting me directly. Pulling into my driveway, the sight of his car caused my stomach to turn. Trevor stepped out, holding a brochure. "Dad, we need to talk," he said, walking toward me. "What now?" I visited Redwood Senior Living today. It's a great facility. Private rooms, constant supervision. I thought if anything ever happened, it'd be a safe option. The brochure's glossy photos flashed in my hand before I handed it back. "I'm not going to a facility. It's just planning ahead," he insisted. "You're stressed. Things slip. I'm trying to prevent a crisis." His tone carried a manufactured patience, as if he were dealing with a stubborn patient rather than his father. "You need stability," he continued. "They can monitor you far better than you can monitor yourself." No argument surfaced. Years of stepping aside had trained him to expect compliance. Seeing he wasn't getting a reaction, he forced a sympathetic smile and headed back to his car. "Think about it, Dad. I'm trying to help." After he drove off, Marcia called. "Ed, you need to see this," she said. A file landed in my inbox within seconds. She explained her notes while I opened it. That's the copy of the health form you showed me. I compared it with standard templates. Sections were added manually, phrases that imply cognitive decline. No professional should alter forms like this. Could Trevor have done it? Someone outside the facility did. Whoever filled those lines wanted a reviewer to jump to conclusions. Her voice faltered slightly before she regained control. You're in danger of being misrepresented, Ed. Be cautious. I thanked her and set the phone down. The kitchen counter felt colder than usual as I leaned against it. Every piece now formed a pattern: isolation rumors, altered paperwork, financial interference, and a prearranged placement at a senior living center. Trevor wasn't waiting for signs of decline, he was manufacturing them. Evening arrived before I realized how long I'd stood there. The mail sat on the table, still unopened. Sorting through the envelopes, one from the Flagstaff clinic stood out again. A second letter this time. Mandatory cognitive and behavioral assessment, court-authorized scheduling. Financial sponsor, Trevor Halperin. The wording sent a pulse through me. Mandatory, court-authorized, financial sponsor. He had already filed something. He had moved faster than I expected. The road to Flagstaff stretched ahead with no breaks in the climb. The mandatory evaluation letter sat on the passenger seat, daring me to look again. My thoughts kept circling the same question: how far had Trevor already gone? Every possibility felt worse than the one before it. Messages from him kept lighting up my phone. Dad, please cooperate. Another followed. You're making this harder than it needs to be. So, any plans now that you're free? Maybe thinking of getting married again? He tried to sound casual, but pushed ahead before I could answer. What's her name again? The woman you've been seeing in Sedona. People out there can be persuasive. I'm just watching out for you, Dad. That word again, soft as velvet, but carrying an edge. A restrained nod was all he got. Something told me any reaction would feed whatever story he was building. His questions drifted from relationships to retirement, then circled toward money in a way that showed his hand more clearly each minute. You know, he continued, lifting his glass halfway. This might be a good time to review major decisions. Fresh start, new resources, that kind of thing. Someone your age should have a solid advisor close by. He didn't blink while saying it. Closer than those guys you usually work with. Someone who really understands your situation. Then the one that cut deeper. I don't want this to reach a point where the court has to step in. Each notification carried a mix of warning and performance, the kind of tone meant for an audience. Whatever sympathy I once had for him thinned mile by mile. Flagstaff's medical complex came into view by noon. The clinic sat near a business park, unremarkable from the outside, but the name on the office door froze me for a moment. Dr. Samuel Rudd. I had seen it earlier in one of the reports Robert sent over. Rudd had been investigated for his role in multiple guardianship disputes cases where older adults lost rights after questionable assessments. The receptionist looked up when I entered. Name Edward Halperin. Her immediate nod suggested familiarity with the file. Oh yes, you're the cognitive decline case. The wording sent a ripple through my stomach. A door opened behind her. A medical assistant stepped out, holding a clipboard. Mr. Halperin, you're the one Trevor mentioned. We have you categorized under the behavioral change assessment. Hearing my life summarized like a chart note carved a hollow space in my chest. It felt scripted, predetermined before I'd said a word. Where's Dr. Rudd? He's reviewing your case notes, the assistant replied. Your son provided helpful context. Helpful for whom? That question never made it past my lips. The assistant motioned toward the waiting area. As I moved to sit, footsteps approached quickly from the back hallway. Trevor rounded the corner wearing an expression of forced relief. "Dad, thank God you came," he said. "I told them I'm the primary support person. This is the right step." "You shouldn't be here," I said. "I can handle my own appointment. I'm responsible for your stability," he answered, lowering his voice. "You don't realize how bad things have become." The assistant watched us with growing interest. Trevor placed a new stack of forms in front of me. "These are consent documents so they can run the full evaluation today. Sign them and we'll get clarity." "No," I said immediately. His face shifted surprise first, then frustration. "Dad, don't do this. You're hurting yourself. If you refuse treatment, they'll have no choice but to escalate this. I'm not signing anything." He stepped closer, dropping his voice to a trembling register that felt staged. "Why are you fighting the people trying to help you? You've been forgetting simple things. You repeated the same story to me twice last week. You misplaced your checkbook. I'm terrified, Dad." Those moments misplaced checkbook repeating a story rushed to mind. Ordinary slips, human ones, yet hearing them presented like evidence made my confidence wobble. Maybe age had taken more than I noticed. Maybe this wasn't all a fabrication. The assistant interrupted. "Mr. Halperin, we need your signature before we proceed." Trevor pushed the pen toward me. "If you don't sign, I'll have no option except filing for emergency medical authority. I'm begging you not to force that." Something inside me steadied. "I'm leaving." Trevor's eyes watered instantly. "You're making a mistake. Please. This is spiraling. If you walk out, I won't be able to protect you from what comes next." His hand twitched, as if he considered blocking the exit. Instead, he stepped back, covering his face with both palms, emitting a muffled cry that drew stares from the hallway. "That's enough," I said, though. My voice shook slightly. Leaving the clinic felt like crossing into another version of my own life, one where roles had flipped without my permission. The walk to the parking lot stretched far longer than the actual distance. Thoughts collided, rage, confusion, doubt, and none of them offered direction. Sitting behind the wheel brought no relief. The silence pressed in, as if waiting for a final verdict about who I was, who I had become, and whether Trevor's narrative held even a grain of truth. 18 years of absorbing tension, avoiding conflict, letting him run over boundaries, it all converged at once. Parts of me wondered whether this collapse had been building for years, not weeks. The phone buzzed again. Trevor's name lit the screen, followed by another message, then another. I couldn't read them. Not yet. As I started the engine, a new email notification appeared, this one from Robert. "Urgent. We need to meet immediately. I found something important." Robert's office door hadn't even closed behind me when he pushed a folder across the table. "Look at these," he said. Pieces of paper covered the desk, my signatures, or what appeared to be mine, lined up beside the versions he knew were authentic. Compare the slant, the breaks between strokes. These are forged. The samples didn't require much decoding. Small irregularities gave them away. A subtle stiffness in the loops, a hesitation I'd never had in my hand. Robert tapped the pages one by one. "Whoever did this studied your handwriting," he said. "But they're not you." A breath escaped me without planning it. "How many forms?" "At least 4, possibly more." He reached for another envelope and slid out a printed email. "That's not all. A cognitive loss evaluation was submitted to a long-term care center weeks ago. 3 weeks to be exact." My mouth stayed half open. 3 weeks, yes. Long before you sold the company. Trevor didn't react to your sale. He anticipated it. The room seemed to tilt. That dinner, the softened tone, the sudden attention, it hadn't been a shift in our relationship at all. It was an opening act. Robert leaned forward. I know this hurts. But listen carefully because time matters. Trevor scheduled a meeting with your bank for tomorrow morning. The agenda includes a discussion about medical power of attorney. If you don't attend, he can present the Flagstaff paperwork and push for provisional control. So if I'm not there, he gains momentum. Courts don't need much to justify an emergency order. We have to outmaneuver him. Robert opened a blank document on his laptop. We're drafting a new will, one with a trigger clause. If Trevor attempts to coerce you financially or pursue guardianship, every dollar of your assets goes to a community fund. No appeal, no adjustment, an iron wall. That'll destroy any expectation he has. That's the point. He typed rapidly while explaining each legal term. My name, the clause, the specific beneficiaries. The language carried a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Midway through, the phone on the table buzzed. Robert nodded for me to answer. Marcia's voice came through with urgency. Ed, I found something. Trevor contacted Dr. Rudd before you got those forms. He told the doctor you had a history of psychiatric instability. I don't have one. I know. But he claimed you stopped treatment years ago. That kind of misinformation influences how professionals evaluate a patient. The line went silent for a second before she added, You're being set up, Ed. Be cautious. Robert raised an eyebrow when I relayed what she said. This aligns with everything we've uncovered. He's creating a record of decline where none exists. We finished the draft together, line by line. He printed it, placed it in a folder, and handed it to me with a gravity I hadn't seen in him before. Lock this away. Don't discuss it with anyone except me, and whatever his next move is, stay steady. I'm trying. I left Phoenix with the new will tucked under my arm. The sun had dropped lower, and the drive home carried a tension that clung to my shoulders. Trevor's car sat in my driveway when I pulled up. He hopped out, holding a small suitcase and a stack of papers. Dad, perfect timing, he said. I've been thinking a lot about your situation. Redwood Senior Living agreed to reserve a unit for you. It's temporary just until things stabilize. A long breath steadied me. You brought a suitcase, I said. I packed essentials for you. Clothes, toiletries. I didn't want you stressing about details. I'm trying to make this transition easy, transition to what a safer place. You're overwhelmed and it shows. Staying here alone isn't an option anymore. He held the suitcase out with both hands, as if expecting gratitude. No argument left my mouth. Just stillness. That seemed to convince him more than a reply ever could. You see, he said gently. You don't need to fight me. Let me take care of things. He placed the suitcase by my feet and walked toward his car with the confidence of someone convinced the plan was sealed. When he drove off, the house felt strangely unmarked, same walls, same hallway, yet something fundamental had shifted. Each step toward my office carried a new weight, the kind that doesn't fully settle, but keeps rising with every realization. The will folder lay on my desk where I had left it that morning. My hand hesitated before reaching for it. A small tremor ran through my fingers as I opened the drawer of the safe. The new will slid into the slot, the metal door closing with a muted click. The conference room at the Scottsdale branch carried a low murmur when I stepped through the doorway. Trevor sat across from our financial advisor folder, open papers, aligned in a way meant to project authority. His voice sharpened as he pointed at a document. My father isn't managing well anymore, he said. This temporary psychiatric evaluation supports that. I'm asking for provisional access so I can keep his accounts stable. The advisor nodded politely, unsure of the tone to adopt. The room felt smaller as he spoke, not from any change in the space, but from the way he leaned in. Dad, listen. I'm not criticizing. I just think you've carried too much on your own. Let me help guide things. You're entering a stage where mistakes get expensive. No anger rose in me, only a sharpening sense of distance. Years of keeping the peace had taught me when to keep my mouth shut, and that habit seemed to embolden him. Trevor took my silence as permission. His shoulders loosened, his voice steadied, and he went on as if he were the one who had built the company I'd spent my life creating. He finished his drink and pulled a folder from his backpack. The move was slick, rehearsed. He placed the papers between our plates, sliding them toward me like a waiter offering dessert. "These are nothing complicated," he said. "Routine health forms. Sign them so I can hold the originals for you." My hand hovered over the stack without touching it. Trevor slid a form across the table. "This report outlines cognitive drift. It's from a licensed evaluator." I moved closer, pulling out the chair beside him. His posture faltered when he noticed me. "Dad, why are you here?" Trevor's words thinned. "You weren't supposed to come until we sorted this." The advisor cleared his throat. "Mr. Halper and your son presented serious concerns. Before we proceed, we'll need both of you to explain." Trevor pushed ahead. He's been confused, misplacing documents, repeating things. He shouldn't be handling large sums right now. My folder landed on the table with more force than planned. "That evaluation never happened," I said. "And the signature on that form is fraudulent." I opened Robert's report, placing the comparison sheets beside Trevor's stack. "These show the forged signatures," I said. "Pressure patterns, stroke variance, shape, irregularities. A licensed examiner confirmed all of it." The advisor adjusted his glasses and leaned over the evidence. His eyes moved steadily down each page. "And this," I added, offering a printed email, "is from the Flagstaff Medical Board. They confirm no assessment was performed. Not by Dr. Rudd, not by anyone." Trevor's jaw tightened. "Dad, you're misunderstanding. This is about safety. You're twisting." "No," I said, meeting his stare directly for the first time in years. "You went too far." The advisor raised a hand. "We need a pause." Trevor shook his head and pushed back from the table. "You're making a spectacle of something that should have stayed private. I'm trying to protect our family, and you're acting like I'm the enemy." "You submitted false medical documentation," the advisor replied. "That's not a misunderstanding. It's serious misconduct." His tone remained steady, but the shift in the room was immediate. Trevor sensed it too. "You don't know what he's been like," Trevor insisted. "He's hiding how bad things are. He's sabotaging us." Another banker stepped in after hearing raised voices. "Sir," she said firmly to Trevor, "you'll need to step out." "I'm his son," he barked. "I'm the only one thinking clearly here." People from nearby desks turned their heads. Trevor's outburst pushed the advisor's patience to its limit. "Please wait in the lobby," the advisor said. "This meeting cannot continue with you disrupting the process." Trevor hesitated, refused to move, then shoved his chair back and stomped toward the hallway, muttering accusations under his breath. The door shut behind him with a dull thud. My phone rang before anyone spoke again. Robert's number flashed. "Put me on speaker," he said when I answered. The advisor tapped the button and set the phone on the table. "I just received confirmation from the probate office," Robert said. "They've flagged Trevor's filings as potentially fraudulent, and the forged medical paperwork is now under review by the county attorney. If the inquiry proceeds, he could face charges." The advisor sat straighter. "Thank you for sharing, Mr. Lang," Robert continued. "And Ed, tell him about the will." I exhaled and turned to the advisor. "There's a new will. It includes a trigger clause. If anyone attempts to coerce guardianship or interfere with my estate, every asset transfers to a community fund." Trevor reappeared in the doorway at that exact moment, having slipped back before security could escort him. His face drained as he heard the words. "What clause?" he asked, voice cracking. "What are you talking about?" Robert answered through the phone. "It means his actions have disqualified him from inheriting anything." The advisor looked at him evenly. Your father acted within his rights to secure his estate. Trevor's knees bent slightly, as if something struck him. You can't do this, he whispered. I was trying to keep everything from falling apart. No, I said calmly. You were trying to take control. He dragged a hand across his face. Dad, you don't understand what you're doing. This is our family. You're ruining your own blood. No one responded. He tried again. Say something. Please. Still nothing. The advisor finally spoke. Mr. Halperin, we need to finalize documentation for your account access. Your son will no longer be involved in these matters. Trevor staggered out of the doorway, searching the room for someone willing to meet his eyes. No one did. The advisor slid a form toward me. This will restore your full control. Sign here. Pen in hand, I steadied the page and wrote my name. The meeting with the Maricopa County investigator wrapped up faster than expected. A single signature transferred the original forged documents into evidence. The investigator sealed the folder, thanked me, and walked me to the door with a professionalism that didn't invite reflection. Stepping outside, a thin breeze moved across the parking area. My phone buzzed as I reached the car. Another message from Trevor. Dad, please talk to me. I can explain. A second followed almost immediately. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Both messages vanished into the archive without a reply. Driving back toward Scottsdale, a realization kept drifting through me. The years I stayed silent hadn't protected anyone. They'd merely taught Trevor that silence meant consent. Boundaries I never defended had eroded until he believed he could occupy every corner of my life. Recognizing that pattern didn't offer comfort, but it did offer clarity. Home felt different now, not safer, but steadier. The freeze on my bank accounts had been lifted that morning, and a restored sense of control settled in. Bills, statements, and small notes from my old routines waited on the table. Nothing dramatic, just life returning to its place. A few days later, I reduced my consulting schedule. The workload I once embraced had begun to feel heavy. Cutting it back opened space I hadn't realized I needed. Small errands filled some mornings, short walks filled others. Scottsdale's familiar streets carried a calmer rhythm when I wasn't rushing between meetings. Trevor's messages kept arriving, requests to meet apologies, written in a tone that swung between panic and remorse. None of them received a response. Distance became its own kind of boundary, one I should have drawn many years earlier. While sorting old mail one afternoon, a call came from Marcia. "Just checking on you," she said. "You've dealt with a lot." "It's settling," I answered. She paused long enough to imply she'd heard everything she needed. "Well, good. If anything comes up, you know how to reach me." Her presence, brief, steady, was enough. Connections that required little explanation often mattered most. Later that week, the finished will sat in a sealed envelope on my desk. I drove it to Robert's office, handed it over, and watched him file it without ceremony. "All set," he said. "You don't need to worry about this anymore. That's the plan." Leaving his office, I felt no satisfaction, no triumph. Just the faint sense of something closing properly for the first time in years. At home, the safe clicked open with its familiar weight. The draft copies of the will went inside along with the documents tied to the investigation. The metal door shut again with a sound that didn't echo, it simply settled. The next morning brought an early drive to Sedona. No agenda, no appointment waiting. Red earth stretched out as the trailhead came into view. A few other hikers prepared their packs, though no one paid attention to anyone else. That suited me. Reaching the edge of the lot, I pulled the straps of my pack into place. One buckle tightened easily, the other took a second try. Nothing symbolic hid in the motion, just a small adjustment before moving forward. The path opened ahead, worn by people who had walked it long before me and would walk it long after. I didn't check my phone, didn't look back at the car, didn't replay what had happened over the past months. The trail waited. I stepped onto it. Trevor tapped the top page with a finger, urging me to look. "Go ahead, Dad. It'll only take a minute." The drive back to Scottsdale didn't take long, but my phone stayed still the entire ride. Most weeks messages from friends came in about golf outings or small meetups, yet nothing appeared this time. A strange hush settled over my contacts list when I checked it at home. A single text finally lit the screen. "What's going on?" "Ed Trevor said you want to rest and avoid everyone." It came from Paul, a friend from Old Town, who rarely held back his thoughts. The phrasing troubled me. Trevor had not only spoken for me, but had taken the liberty to rewrite my intentions. No explanation was sent in reply. Recording the detail felt more useful than debating it. The next morning brought a need to clear my head, so I drove to Honor Health on Shea to see Marcia Ruiz. She had known me longer than most people left in my life, and her work in the hospital gave her an eye for things others overlooked. She was updating charts when I walked in. "Ed, you doing all right?" She stepped away from the desk, sensing something unusual. A folded packet left my jacket quickly. "Marcia, can you tell me what these terms mean?" They showed up in some forms Trevor asked me to sign. Her brow tightened as she scanned the page. "Who asked you to sign this, Trevor?" She looked up from the papers. "These aren't casual documents. Some of this relates to capacity evaluations. Why would he need you to sign anything like that?" No answer came to mind that sounded reasonable. Marcia didn't press further, though concern sat plainly on her face. "Be careful, Ed. Don't sign anything else until you understand every line." A quick nod ended the conversation, but her warning followed me through the rest of the day. Doubt crept in where anger had been. Maybe Trevor really believed I needed oversight. Maybe he read my silence as a sign of weakness. A father who hadn't drawn clear boundaries for years could accidentally teach a child that boundaries didn't matter. Those thoughts hovered as I drove to my financial advisor's office. Before reaching the parking lot, a call from Trevor interrupted the plan. "Dad, shift your meeting to next week. I already talked to them. They'll adjust your portfolio once we go over things together." "That wasn't the arrangement," I said. "You're overloading yourself. Trust me." The line clicked after that. Trevor often ended conversations abruptly when certainty served him better than discussion. I turned the car around and headed home without seeing the advisor. The steering wheel felt heavier than it should have. Each step Trevor took seemed purposeful, yet still coated in the language of care. That evening, Old Town offered a distraction. I stopped at a small bar where colleagues from my earlier days sometimes gathered. Their voices carried from the corner of the room, and as I walked toward them, a familiar name reached my ears. "Ed's slipping," one of them said. "Yeah, I heard he's showing memory issues." "Poor guy. Hope his son's helping him out." Both men froze when they saw me, and one cleared his throat. "Ed, hey. Didn't see you there." "Where'd you hear that?" They exchanged an uneasy glance. "Just something Trevor mentioned, that he's stepping up because you've been forgetting things." No argument rose to defend myself. Their reactions told me enough. What Trevor spread privately now circulated among people who once respected my judgment. Reputations don't fracture loudly. They fade piece by piece, usually while the person in question stands in the same room. A short drink later, I walked back to my truck, noticing how quickly a rumor could carve space between me and my old life. Trevor's shift in behavior hadn't stalled at our dinner table. It had seeped outward, reshaping the story others believed about me. Reaching home, a stack of mail waited near the door. Bills, ads, catalogs, nothing unusual at first glance. Then one envelope stood out. Formal letterhead. A medical provider I didn't recognize. My name printed neatly above a barcode. I tore it open. Appointment confirmation, cognitive and behavioral assessment location. Northern Pines Clinical Evaluation Center, Flagstaff, AZ referring party, Trevor Halperin. The letter noted a date already arranged, along with instructions to bring identification and a family member responsible for ongoing health decisions. A second page listed Trevor's number under the contact column. I read the lines again, though none of it changed. The appointment had been made without my knowledge, under the assumption that I needed someone to speak for me. The Flagstaff letter stayed in my hand during the drive to Trevor's townhouse. He opened the door before I knocked. "Dad, you didn't call. Something wrong. I got a notice for a cognitive evaluation. You want to explain why my name is on that without my approval?" Trevor stepped back and made a path to the living room. His shoulders curved forward as if carrying a burden he'd been waiting to reveal. "I've been worried about you," he said. "Those little slips lately, forgetting appointments, losing your keys, getting turned around at the store." I couldn't ignore it. "I haven't been getting turned around anywhere," I said. Trevor reached for his phone. "Look, I'm not trying to argue. Just watch this." He played a short clip showing a man wandering between two rows of parked cars, glancing around as if unsure of direction. The figure resembled me wearing a shirt I owned. He paused the clip. "That was at the mall. You walked in circles for nearly 10 minutes.